I was born in a mining village in Yorkshire.
Which one was that?
Oh, it was a village called South Kirkby. It's near Doncaster. And I went to school there and then went to grammar school. And
So you had to win a scholarship to get to grammar school,
I
didn't
did,
you?
yes.
So your parents knew you were clever. You're pretty smart. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 2 sisters and 1 brother.
So were you the youngest, the oldest, and the
Oldest. I was the oldest.
So you were the first.
Although a daughter died who was born before me.
Ah. And your father, what did he do?
He was a lorry driver.
Did he work around the mines, or was he connected to the mines?
No, he wasn't connected to the mines.
But he was from that area of Yorkshire. He was a Yorkshireman himself.
Yeah, born in Keighley.
Right, and what was his name?
William.
William. And your mother?
She was the daughter of a farmer.
Ah. So, and they'd been married during the First World War, I assume?
Yes.
But did he go to the First World War, your father?
Yes, he did.
What was he in?
He was in the Navy.
Ah, was he Jutland?
On ships going over to Russia.
Crumbs. Flame.
Yeah.
Right, so you went to primary school and then you did the examination and you got to grammar school.
Yes.
So what grammar school did you go to?
Hemsworth Grammar School.
And that was that, that was quite academic school and you had to do Latin and things of that nature, did you?
Yes.
So when did you leave grammar school? What age were you when you did that?
I was 15 when I left.
Why did you leave at that age? Because you could have stayed a bit longer.
I left a little early because an aunt of mine came to visit us, and they lived in Dartford, Kent, and they said they wanted somebody at the firm where her husband worked as an apprentice compositor, and if I was interested, I could go and live with them. I jumped at the chance because I had no propensity to go down the mines.
Oh, that was the option.
That was the option, really.
And the reason you left school, but you wanted to work, or did your parents need your income or something of that nature?
Well,
No.
they were all right, but it was very handy that I was no longer a burden on them.
Yeah, exactly the same as my father's experience. So you went to Dartford. When was that? In the summer of 1934, was it? No, was it
35 probably?
Can't remember dates.
34.
When you were 15?
Be 34 then.
So 1934. So you lived in Dartford and then you started... What was the firm you worked for, by the way?
H.G. Ellis and Son.
And you were training apprenticeship...
As a compositor.
And what did the work involve? What kind of work did you have to do in that place?
We did a lot of printing for the League of Nations, as it was called then.
And compositing in those days is a skill that's now more or less gone, isn't it?
It is.
Because you used to cast the metal type and then have to arrange it.
Yes.
What was the most difficult thing about being a compositor? Because it's a highly skilled job, wasn't it? But what was the most difficult part of that story?
I don't know that I found it all that difficult, any of it really. It just took its place.
And at that time you were living in Dartford.
Yes.
And then in 1939 you got a letter.
I got a letter to say I had to report on Salisbury Plain to join the Royal Artillery. But before the due date for reporting, war was declared. That was all cancelled, and I had a letter to report to one of the London stations, and there joined the London Irish Rifles.
So did you know you were joining the London Irish Rifles?
Not until I got to the station.
And can you understand why a Yorkshireman was put into the London Irish Rifles? Because you would expect someone with an Irish name or an Irish connection to get there.
I imagine it was because Ward is really an Irish name. I think there were 6 Irishmen in our company named Ward.
Oh, I see. So you did all the basic training, and that's when you met. You dealt with my father because he joined the same day.
Yes.
I mean, how do you remember? What do you remember about Ted O'Sullivan or Rosie? Do you remember anything about him? Or was it all stuff that you have to edit out?
No, I can remember the initial training we did was we were billeted in Barker Sports Ground next to Wimbledon tennis courts, and we slept on the floor. And I remember the first night there was so much noise going on that people couldn't get to sleep, and they were chatting to one another, talking to one another. And I can remember Rosie O'Sullivan chatted to me, and I've since discovered that in the book he wrote he thought I was all right.
Lovely. So you did the training, and in the end, you were promoted to sergeant, weren't you?
Yes.
And you were what? You were platoon sergeant or section sergeant? Were you in charge of a platoon or a section?
A section, yes.
Right. So you did all the training, and that included all over Britain, and your final training was in Scotland.
Yes.
And then you were put on the ship in Greenock. So you didn't really know until the last minute where you were going, did you?
No.
So when you arrived at Greenock, and it's only then when you saw the newspapers and said, on the what was the 8th of November, that the Operation Torture, and it's only then, and I think that was on the 11th, or was it the 12th, 11th of November, that you saw the newspapers in Greenock, then you realise where you may be going.
Yeah, but before that, the Battle of Britain was going on. They were losing so many pilots that they asked for volunteers from the army to join the RAF, and I volunteered. I went down to London, passed all the exams and interviews, and they said, go back to your unit, we'll send for you. I got back to the unit, and lo and behold, 2 or 3 weeks later, we were transferred up to Scotland, going out to North Africa, and all transfers to the RAF were cancelled.
So you could have been a pilot?
I could have been.
Right, so tell us about the journey from Scotland to Algeria. Do you have any memories about that enormous amphibious journey? You know, there were a lot of ships on the Atlantic, and then eventually you came through Gibraltar. Is there anything about that you remember very much?
No, the most thing I remember about it was so rough through the Bay of Biscay. Lots of people were sick.
Including you, I see.
Well, I felt sick. I don't think I was actually sick.
So you're a natural seaman as well. So then you arrived at Algiers. Do you remember when you arrived at Algiers? What was the environment like in Algiers when you arrived there in November
22nd of November.
22nd November 1942?
No, we were all spread around an orchard with fruit trees, and it was quite rough sleeping.
Good, and then you set off by train, didn't you, to Bougie?
We did, yes.
And then by truck
Yeah.
through Constantine into Tunisia. Do you remember much about that journey?
Not a lot, apart from the fact that fuel for the train was very scarce, and they were getting wood as they went along. And one of the stops, we were getting very thirsty, so we managed to get a large plate of metal, which we put on the floor of the train, and lit a fire to make tea. Unfortunately, the floor of the train caught fire, so we had to throw it all out.
You're a sergeant at this time. You should be keeping better order, Sergeant Ward. So, and then you were taken into roughly, it started getting serious when you arrived at Gubalat, didn't it, in that area?
Yes.
So, do you remember the first time a member of your team or someone you knew was wounded or killed? Do you remember that moment?
Yes, we were going to do an attack early one morning, and we had to get into position the day before, so they decided we would move across an open piece of ground into that position in broad daylight, and halfway across, inevitably, because I'd warned my men, that we would get shelled as soon as we got into the middle, which we did. And going across there, one or two got injured, including the platoon commander. Our platoon commander got shrapnel in his back.
Who was that?
I can't remember his name.
Was that? I think that wasn't that you were trying to. Were you trying to recover some tanks? Was that the operation?
No, that was before then. We were due to attack Hill 286.
Okay, but the first one was when your recollection is that was your first operation in which your
Yes,
colleagues were wounded.
yes.
And how did you react initially to that? I mean, you've been trained before, but how?
Well,
You're not a natural soldier. You were made a soldier because you're conscripted. So how do you react to this incredible situation?
When the shells started falling, I'd warn my men that, drop to the ground when you hear them coming, which we did, and then got up and continued. Dropped into a wadi, and then we were marching down the wadi to a point where we would get in position for the attack. And going down this wadi from nowhere at all, must have been my guardian angel. One voice, one word, run. And it took no argument. So I shouted, run to my men, ran down the wadi, turned round the bend, and no sooner got round the bend than the shell fell into the wadi where we'd been running from.
And who said the run? Do you know who said run?
No,
Nobody said it.
no, it was just in my head.
Amazing. That was on 279, 286. That was when he attacked 279.
Yeah, before 286.
And then when you open the shelling, and then as you in your account, the attack on 279, 286 was a very, very bad experience. Can you try and describe what was going on? You were on the hill for almost the whole day on the hill, so tell us about that.
Well, because our platoon commander had got wounded, and we were the platoon in reserve. The other two platoons were forward, and we were in reserve. When we went over the first hill, nothing happened. Over the second hill, nothing happened. Onto the third hill, and all hell broke loose. Machine guns, and most of the people over there were wounded.
And that was machine guns. There was Stuka attack, wasn't there?
Yeah.
So the Stukas were attacking you. There was artillery as well, wasn't there?
Artillery was, yes.
So did you think at that point that you wouldn't make it?
We did, but even more so later on. We all wound up in a large depression in the ground, being shelled. And suddenly I discovered we had a Royal Artillery officer with us with a wireless set, and he was directing artillery to shell the enemy, and he called me over and he said, go to the top of the hill and find out where the guns are firing from. So I went to the top of the hill, fell into a depression in the ground which looked a bit like a grave, and I thought, oh, perhaps I shall be here for the rest of the war. My life would be gone. I discovered they were firing from a farmhouse on the plain. Got back to the depression in the ground and found that the shell had fallen exactly where I'd been lying. One or two others had been injured, and they were got out by the first aid people.
So that was the foot of 279, 286, wasn't it?
Yes.
And that was another hand of destiny.
Yes.
So that night, 3 o'clock in the next morning, that's when the Panzer tanks attacked over the hill in the middle of the night. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, we were in a wadi, and suddenly all hell broke loose again. And
This time there were tanks, weren't there?
yes, but we didn't actually see the tanks. You could hear them, and firing all along, and we just had no hope of replying, so we just had to retreat.
So where you headed towards Burrada, didn't you? down the
Yeah.
road to the Burrada. You went to
Yes.
get away from there. But the London Irish battalion, Second Battalion London Irish, that night was very severely broken up, wasn't it? So
It
people were
was.
scattered all over the place.
Yes, when we eventually all met up, I think the company was about 30 strong.
And originally there were 120 or so.
Yeah.
So you lost.
One or two others turned up a little bit later on. Yes.
So you lost a lot of friends and colleagues in
We
that.
did. Yes.
Very painful experience for you. So after that, and that was very bad, then the London Irish Rifles was based on what we call Stuka Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
You were there for a bit, weren't you?
Yes.
On the high ground overlooking the plain. And then on the 25th, you went to Gafour for a bath.
Yes.
That was welcome, wasn't it?
Very welcome.
How long
yes.
had it been since you had a bath?
3 weeks.
Right. And you'd been involved in a very serious attack. And then on the 26th, there was another attack on the London Irish Rifles on Stuka Ridge. And that lasted for a day. And I think you were not on Stuka Ridge at the time, so you avoided that one.
Yes.
And afterwards, the London Irish Rifles was taken out of the line for rest and recuperation and training. And that's when you got a problem with your knee.
Yes. We were doing an exercise of house clearing, and I stumbled somewhere and banged my knee on a wall, and it came up like a balloon. And we were marching on the way back after the exercise when the CO drew up in his car and called me out and said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Well, I banged my knee and it's swollen." So he said, "Get on the truck, report sick when you get back." I went to report sick, and they tried reducing the swelling with hot and cold compressors, but it didn't have any effect whatsoever. So eventually I was regraded from A1 to B1.
And what did that mean? That you could no longer be a combat?
No longer be a member of the army.
Front line, yeah.
Yeah.
Carrying weapons and assaulting. So that was another happy intervention, you might argue.
Yes.
Because you might not have made the Sicily and the rest of Italy. So now after that, tell us about what happened then, because that's a really interesting story, and that of course leads up to you meeting Margaret.
Yes. We went to a transit camp at Phillipville, and from there, I can't remember how long we were there, but then we were transferred to another transit camp just outside Algiers. And then one day on the notice board, they put a notice up that a unit would be coming round to assess your abilities and try and find you a job to do. And because I was getting so bored of doing nothing and not being able to walk anywhere, my name was top of the list. Eventually this unit turned up, and we had an education test in the morning and a mechanical aptitude test in the afternoon, then an interview with the officer. And when I went to see the officer, he said, "What would you like to do?" As a trainee compositor, I'd heard that an army newspaper was being started in Algiers, so I said I'd like to join the army newspaper. But he didn't think there was much chance of that, so he said, "What else would you like to do?" And I said, "I don't care as long as I do something, because I'm fed up with doing nothing." He said, "I think you'll make a good cipher operator." So that was that. A few days later, I was called into the office and given a movement order. 6 of us were going, and I got outside, quickly looked to see where our destination was. There was no destination on the moving order. So I shot back in the office, said that there's no destination on here. "You're being picked up by a truck," he said. So eventually the truck arrived, and I said to the driver, "Where are we going?" He said, "I'm not allowed to tell you." So off we went in this truck to the other side of Algiers, to a place called Massingham, a camp called Massingham. And this was a lot of villas built on the beach as holiday homes, surrounded by barbed wire with guards on the gate, and in we went. And inside there were Army, Navy, Air Force, and girls. So this was the SOE wireless station working to the agents in France and Italy.
So you were, aside for that, so you were receiving wireless code messages sent by wireless, and you were deciphering it. Was that right?
Enciphering messages to the agents and then deciphering their replies. Yes.
Amazing. So Margaret was in the same camp. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how did you meet? How did it happen?
The sergeant's mess decided that they would occasionally, and quite frequently really, hold dinner dances, and these girls were invited. So I was with a different Margaret as a dancing partner, and the Margaret, my Margaret now, was dancing partner to the
Physio.
the physical training chap, and eventually both the physical training chap and my partner went on leave at the same time, so that threw Margaret and I together. So we danced together, and then eventually I was issued with an order to go to Yugoslavia.
Well, before then, just a quick word about it. Now, what was Margaret doing in Algeria? That's pretty unusual for a woman. She was wireless operator with the SOE as well.
She was.
And how old was she then?
19.
19.
19.
And you were 25.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So then you met and you went to dance together, so you got to know each other at that point. Was there an instant attraction? Did you feel your destinies entwined? Or
No. Eventually I was given a moving order to go to Yugoslavia, and we exchanged addresses and said, if you're my way, pop it. Be good to see you. So off, I went off to the to catch a plane one night to go to Yugoslavia.
that is from Algeria
From
to.
Algeria.
You were flying directly to Yugoslavia.
No, flying to Bari.
Bari.
And then down to Taranto, and then a boat across to Yugoslavia.
Right. And in Yugoslavia, the British had a mission with Tito's partisans. Was
They
that
did.
where you were going to go?
Yes.
And that was very famous because Randolph Churchill was there.
It
A
was.
lot of famous people were there at that point, including someone I used to be my colleague, John Earl. Yeah, and he was there. But what happened? You didn't make it Yugoslavia. Why not?
Getting to the plane, there was a violent thunderstorm.
Was that before you took off?
Yes. The plane just couldn't take off.
That was in Bari, right?
No, that was in
Taranto.
It was still in.
it's still in Algiers.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Bleeder was the aerodrome there, and we delayed 24 hours. We got off the next night, and it was a twin-engine Dakota, and halfway across the Mediterranean, one of the engines started misfiring. So the pilot said, we'll never make it over the mountains to Bari, we'll have to drop at Naples. So we stayed at Naples, further delay, eventually caught another plane, got over to Bari, and I went into the office there, and they said, you're too late, we've sent people to Yugoslavia from here, you will have to stay and take their place.
So destiny again. When was that? It was 1940. Was that 43 or 44?
44, yes.
So at that point, Naples was held by the Allies, but was casino still going on at that point? Do you remember?
No, it is even further north than that, I think.
Right,
Up
so
in
it was
Po
up.
Valley.
In the Po Valley, so it was towards after the summer of 1944.
Yeah.
So there you were in Bari, working with the SOE.
Yeah, it was outside Bari on the coast, and
Mari.
yeah, called Torre Mari, yes.
And you were dealing with the deciphering of messages to the Yugoslav mission, the SOE Yugoslav mission, or was it a
Yes,
wider?
wider than that, you know, even in northern Spain, northern Italy.
Fantastic. And then Margaret cropped up again.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
yeah. Several weeks later, after I got there, I deciphered a message to say that the following families will be joining your unit, and Margaret was there. So I made it my priority to meet her when she got there.
All right, so there was nothing planned about that. Again, it was an accident.
Exactly.
Pure chance.
Yes.
So, and then, you know, things moved on, and then it was in Bari that you proposed, wasn't it?
It was in Torre Mari, actually.
Oh, sorry, right,
Yeah.
correction. So it was in Torre Mari that you proposed.
Yes, it was.
So tell us about that. Anything you remember about it?
Well, it was just on the rocks, on the seafront, and we just got very attached to each other. And,
Did you have a ring at that time?
No, I didn't.
No.
Although we, two others got married while we were at Torre Mari, and they went into the town and bought a ring, and I was best man for the marriage, and then they were split up after they had their honeymoon.
Oh, well. So, when was that? Do you remember when you
it's
proposed?
1945, yes.
And when the war was still going on at that point?
Yes, it was still
Before the-
up in the north. Yes.
So you finished on the last day of the war. Where were you? Can you remember that? On the 8th of May? Do you remember the 8th of May 1945? Where were you at that point?
I was at Torre Mari, yes.
Do you remember anything about the atmosphere when you heard that the war was over?
Oh, it was absolutely amazing, the news, although there wasn't a lot of celebration, but very happy, everybody.
And you knew you'd survived it, and you could get on with your life.
Yes.
So you came back, you were engaged, and Margaret came back to Britain in the end of 1945.
Yeah, November 45, I think.
Yeah, was demobbed in 1945, you went back to civilian life.
Yeah.
And then you came back in January 1946, and you were married on the 9th of March 1946.
Yes.
Where was that? Where did that happen?
Putney, in London.
And it was
Near Southwood.
and it was the Church of England, was it Anglican Church?
It was, yes.
How many guests did you have at the wedding? Was it many? Was it lots? Was there very few?
Family.
It was family mostly, of
Ah.
course, yes.
Very nice. And where did you do your honeymoon? Do you remember?
Oh. Yeah.
I can remember going on a honeymoon. It was a small village, and I can't remember the name of it now. But an aunt of Margaret's had given her a fur coat, and she was wearing this fur coat, but it was shedding the fur, so all my suit was covered in all this
It was a
fur.
good start to your honeymoon, was it?
And on an army truck to the hotel. Wasn't
Oh
it?
yes.
You couldn't get a taxi.
You couldn't get a taxi, so there was an army truck picking up the army people, so they gave us a lift to the hotel to start our honeymoon.
So you went back to your old job, I see. Did you go?
Yes.
So you went back as if, this is almost 7 years after. You'd seen the world, you'd been in war, you'd been to Algeria and Italy, you'd done these amazing things. And then suddenly, 1946, you're out of uniform, you're back basically doing the job that you previously did.
Yes.
How did you find that? Do you remember? Did you find that a difficult thing to adjust to? Going from
Not
such a
really,
dramatic
no.
life.
No, it was fine. It just fell into place, and we were. What have I got to say?
I'm feeling.
Go on then.
I because he'd only got very little money, finishing his
apprenticeship.
training, and I was at this day nursery with the little ones, and I was very proud to say to the cook that we were going to get married. Oh, she said, I hope you've got a good job, because you won't manage under
£10 a week.
£10 a week. And I thought, gosh, I'm lucky if we're going to have £5 a week.
Yeah.
So that's what happened, didn't it?
That was our start, yes.
So you did your apprenticeship in the print, and then you worked, and eventually you moved to have a career in national newspapers.
Yes.
So which newspapers did you work for?
It was the Star Evening newspaper, News Chronicle and Star, owned by the Cadbury people.
And then you stayed in the print industry to the end of your career.
I did.
And then after you finished your career in print, then you started a completely new career as a market gardener.
Yes, because our sons were in agriculture, and they had machinery and nowhere to keep it. So we decided we had to sell the house and buy somewhere where they could keep their machinery. So we found this 9.5 acre small holding with a nice barn for keeping their machinery in. So we moved up to a small village near Cambridge.
Really.
And that was an entirely new career and a new life.
Absolutely.
Amazing.